Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Library Hall, and thanks for coming out tonight. Thanks for moving towards the front of the room at will to really engage in this amazing conversation. I'm just going to be really quick. Angela reached out. I'm really grateful to Angela and Kristen both for kind of noodling some ideas. It's been a while since we've been here doing this, and back and forth. She kind of like in the middle of the sentence said there's something about navigating difficult conversations, and I was like looking at the calendar and I'm thinking about the election and all of these things and the things happening in the world, and I just think this is the most right possible moment to have this presentation tonight. So thank you for sharing this and enlightening the community with this. This is part of our Health Perspectives series, which is a once and occasional something we do here at the library with books and films and speakers and all kinds of things. And usually they're a little farther apart. I need my cheat sheet here. But we actually are doing another one next week about navigating Medicare. It's Tuesday. It's going to be Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. If you've done this with Johanna before and you still have questions, she'll be back. She's incredible. This has become one of our most popular kind of and only repeating programs that we do. But as people edge closer to 65, it is like a ton of really important information you don't want to get wrong. So anyways, she's here. She offers like a whole night of free of like 101 and then answers all your great questions. And so that's next Tuesday night. And beyond that, I'm just going to let this team roll with it tonight. Wishing you all peaceful conversations, joy, all of the things as we navigate the end of this year. So thank you for coming tonight and doing this. Grace is going to be the official introducer.
There you go. Thank you. Yeah. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Dr. Grace Charles. I'm a naturopathic doctor at Emerald Integrative Health. If you don't know, Emerald Integrative Health is formerly Minds in Motion, and we are the premier integrative health clinic in Steamboat Springs. We've been operating, We've been operating for over 10 years, providing mental and physical health care. In fact, saying providing care really doesn't do it justice, because we really, truly integrate the healing process for both mind and body. There are some other practitioners from Emerald Integrative Health here. Olivia Rose in the stripes is a counselor, a fabulous counselor at our clinic. And Lana Nisley is our fabulous dietitian, nutritional counselor. They're both great. Anyone else here from Emerald? No, this is us. We also offer naturopathic medicine, functional medicine with famous Dr. Phaedra Fegley. We have a psychiatric nurse practitioner who does psych med management. We offer coaching, all sorts of counseling. If you'd like to learn more about our clinic, there is a table in the back with all sorts of information. We're so lucky to hear Angela and Kristen speak tonight. Angela is the owner of Emerald Integrative Health. She's my boss. She's a licensed clinical social worker who has further training in nervous system regulation and contemplative psychology. She's passionate about neuroscience and is a practicing counselor and ketamine guide at Emerald Integrative Health. Cristen Malia earned her master's degree from Europa University and offers mindfulness-based psychotherapy, EMDR, ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, meditation coaching, yoga, and other somatic tools to support her clients. These are two of the absolute best counselors in Steamboat. They have been my teachers, and I'm really looking forward to what we'll learn tonight. So thank you, and welcome, Angela and Kristen.
Thank you much. Grace. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Is it okay if we sit? Does it feel comfortable for us to be sitting? Okay. If you can't see, there's lots of room in the front row. I would just like to take a moment to reflect on our day today, September 11th. Just having a moment to reflect what happened on this day over 20 years ago and how many Americans we lost on September 11th, an enemy from outside of our country created such catastrophe that it actually brought our country together. And so there's a name for that, and it's called enemy, the common enemy effect. And what happens is that if there's something that happens outside of the unit, then it brings the whole unit together. And I'm sure all of you remember how we felt as Americans and how patriotic we felt about wanting to take care of each other and take care of fallen firefighters and the people that we lost. And what's been happening, I think, lately is a lot of that polarity has gone inside of our country. There's a lot of division and a lot of hatred and fear happening. And it can be on an international level, and all of us in this room can identify that it is even sometimes going down to a family level. And so our purpose tonight is to talk about how to have and navigate difficult conversations from a personal level all the way up to talking about global relations. So it's our intention tonight to ask you to put your biases aside and try to keep an open heart and an open mind. Our talk tonight is mindfulness-based and contemplative-based, so I'm sure that there's going to be no surprise here when we really tell you that the secret of the talk is it's really about your own body and your own regulation. So if you were looking for some magic beans, you might need to head back out. We don't have any, I'm really sorry. So without further hesitation, I think we're gonna get started. So what we're gonna talk to you about tonight is a concept called compassionate exchange. And it's a way that you can work with talking to somebody, and there's a framework for that. And Kristen and I took the framework from the contemplative psychology, I guess, theoretical models, and we changed it and made it a little bit easier to remember, and are going to be presenting that to you tonight. So compassionate exchange, can I borrow the notes? I just want to read to you what I wrote so that I don't forget anything. Thank you. It's the practice of being aware in your own body regulation, your thoughts and your emotions prior to, during, and after you engage with another human. When we exchange with a human, more than just words are happening. We must acknowledge that and work with it compassionately. It is also the practice of understanding these 4 steps or pillars that we're going to talk about tonight. And really understanding that compassionate exchange simply is a practice that is healthier and more productive and allowing you to attend to all the dynamics of what an exchange looks like. Kristen's going to get us started in a little centering practice.
So as Angela mentioned, that we don't have any magic beans to give you, but we can remind you of and offer you practices to help empower you and give you agency that we can all have better ability, more capacity to regulate our own nervous systems. So we're going to start with a couple practices this evening. And the first is just sitting. And sitting quiet, your eyes can be open or closed, whatever you feel more comfortable with. And find a comfortable position, tall spine. And this will only be for about a minute. And in this quiet sitting, I invite you to notice what's happening within you. So perhaps you notice the quality of your thoughts, the flow of your breath, sensations in your your body. The emotions that are flowing through you. Just a few more moments here. I will be quiet to let you sit in quiet. Just a few more breaths. And after your next exhale, you can bring your attention back into our space together. When we sit like that, or for extended periods of time, longer periods of time, we encourage you to always bring in the practices of being curious and non-judgmental and open to whatever you're witnessing within you. And also, we will use those practices when we engage in conversation with others. Curiosity, non-judgment, and openness. Okay? All right, one more little practice here, tool that we can use anywhere, anytime. It's like free medicine. It is free medicine, and it is our breath. Yeah, I just heard you. So how this is going to work, I invite you to practice in this way with me. We're going to make our exhales a little bit longer than our inhales, and I'll count for us. And when we have an extended exhale, it helps our nervous system to down-regulate so that we can be more responsive, less reactive, and we can access curiosity, non-judgment, openness, and compassion. Okay? So we'll do about 6 rounds of this, and if you need to breathe, and I'm not saying to breathe, what should you do? Yes, gold star. Okay. So let's all start with an exhale, please. Empty out your breath completely. And inhale for the count of 4. 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale 6, 5, 3, 2. Inhale 4. And exhale 6. Breathing out unnecessary tension. And just a few more rounds. Breathe in for 4. And exhale. Let's do one more. Inhale. The long, slow, and complete exhale. And let tension move out. It's not needed. And allow your breath to return to a natural rhythm. Thank you for practicing. All right, back to Angel.
Thank you. I was a little nervous, but I feel so much better now. Come on, sit down.
Right at the front.
I love it. All right. So, before you consider engaging in a difficult conversation, I would ask, Kristen and I would ask you to consider the first pillar, or first step, which is you. Looking at where are you? What is your nervous system doing? What I would like to bring in and offer you is that your nervous system really plays a large role as to how information gets input into your brain. So if you're coming from a place where you feel threatened or you feel angry, then you are what we're calling a sympathetic nervous system response. That you are, some people say, seeing red, right? Fight or flight. Now, the conversation may not have even started yet. You may have even put yourself into a fight or flight system even by thinking about having a conversation
voice intonations, how we read people's body postures is always going to be colored by how our nervous system is doing. And so how we perceive someone coming at us, or if we are approaching someone, what we are seeing is through a filter. I would invite you in this first step or first pillar to think about me, right? What do I need to do to enter into a harder conversation? What's going on with my body? So the first step is titled Me, okay? And really wanting to take that part seriously, that maybe you are noticing that your mind is racing a little bit. You read an email and all of a sudden, right, your mind is racing, or you see an ad, or someone, just makes a comment, and before you know it, your mind is coming up with a rebuttal, or it's coming up with all the reasons why this is not a good idea. And so the first step, the first pillar that Kristen and I are offering to you is stop and do one of the exercises that Kristen just taught us and check in. What's going on with me? So nervous system dysregulation can look like a lot of different things for different people. Sometimes if your nervous system is dysregulated, you might have sweaty palms, or you might have sweaty feet. You might notice that you're a little shaky in your hands or in your voice. You might notice that your heart feels a little bit more pronounced in its beats. You might notice some squeezing in your chest, or some tightness in your throat, or some raciness in your thoughts. So really a huge part of successfully navigating difficult conversations is, what am I doing? What is my system doing? What is my filter, right? Because we literally do have these filters, and trust me, none of us in this room are so above these filters. The nervous system, this fight or flight system, has been around for 400,000 years. We are not smarter than that, okay? It will change how we see things.
Okay.
So what's the first pillar? Great. And we decided to call these pillars because, yes, that one that Angela just spoke of, the you, me, is an essential first step. But really, all four of these stages, steps, pillars, we will move through them and check back in with them throughout the whole conversation. So you might flow from checking in with yourself to then the other, then the whole, then back to self, etc. So the concept of pillars connected with us because there will be four pillars, and then that helps create a stable, sustainable, steady platform to then have the conversation on. Okay, so pillar 2 is you, meaning other. So the person that you're having the conversation with, to consider their position, to try to put yourself as best as you can into their shoes. And there's well, let me talk about this first. Our brain has a negativity bias, meaning, does that mean? Okay, I'll keep talking, let's see what happens. Negativity bias, meaning that our brain will notice the bad, the negative, the hard, the ugly before it notices the great, the beautiful, the wonderful, the easy. And with these mindfulness practices, we can train it to override the negativity bias. Make sense? Yeah. Maybe you've heard the term that the brain is hardwired in a way so that it's Velcro for the bad, but Teflon for the good, meaning the good just slides right off, but the bad sticks. Okay? So, if we're coming into a situation and our nervous system is dysregulated, and like Angela us spoke about, if we're in a place where we're have a fear response or we're seeing red, and we have this negativity bias happening, then more often than not, we're going to think that the other, the person that we're talking to, is more of an object. We'll forget about their humanity. It will be difficult to connect. That we'll think that they're very different than us. And in actuality, the other, so whomever you're talking to, are more similar than different. So most people in the world, average person, wants peace and connection and joy and values the relief of suffering and justice. We all just go about it in a slightly different way to get there. So when we can remember this, that our brain has this negativity bias, and that maybe we're in the red and that we're seeing this person as other, that can help check us, to bring us back, and to consider the common humanity, that we're all in this together. Okay, there's some interesting statistics I'd like to share with you about this. This neuroscientist, Jamil Saki, professor of psychology at Stanford University and director of the Stanford Social Neuroscience Laboratory, he studies political perceptions. And what he says, what his data, what he's collected, shows that in most cases, we're dead wrong about who's on the other side. So, for example, Democrats think that 25% of Republicans make more than $250,000 per year. The actual number is, does anyone have a guess? 2%. So this perceived polarization, believing that the other is more different than they actually are, is much greater than the real polarization, the real difference between self and other. All sides tend to overestimate how anti-democratic the other side is by 2 times. We think that the person on the other side is 4 times as enthusiastic about violence than they really are. And there's another good one here I want to share with you too. So, I have one. Yeah, go for it.
There's also a study that talks about how over and over it has been shown that people assume that the other perspective is more simple in coming to the conclusion than what we have gone through. And so because we live in our own brain, we know that our decisions and our beliefs and our passions have a lot of stories to them, and they have research to them, and they have experiences, right? Interestingly, even though this doesn't make cognitive sense, study after study has shown that we actually assume that the person that we are disagreeing with has not gone through the same amount of thinking, and that that person is more simple-minded. And so even in this study, it was interesting that even the people who are very bright, they just have this default belief. Well, you haven't done as much research as me, or you don't understand, right? How many times have we heard that? Well, you don't understand what I'm going through or what I've been through. And so what we do understand is that this assumption is culturally widespread, which can create difficult conversations to be more, they can escalate very quickly. Did you find it?
Yeah. So the amount of people from every part of the political spectrum who want more compromise, more peace, and less conflict, so everybody out there, It's north of 80% of people want that. And so, remembering that this is happening, that we often see the other side as very different and also incorrect, when we can remember that, this neuroscientist at Stanford, his studies show that when we can pay attention to this data, that the other side fears violence as much as you do, and to show them that the other side doesn't actually hate you, data shows that it can decrease the threat felt by the other side by showing them who the other side really is. So if we can just remember that, it can help de-escalate ourselves, okay? And so, before we communicate, as we're communicating with the other that we're considering and practicing having empathy and consideration for, we can ask questions such as, am I connected to my empathy right now? Am I truly considering how the world looks through the other's eyes? And how do my words or actions, how will they feel to the other? Or how would I feel if someone spoke to me the way I'm speaking to them? I think that's really good. All right, so that's pillar number 2, the you.
All right, pillar number 3. In contemplative psychology, it's called mutual agreement, but what we're calling it is we. Me, you, we. We wanted to keep this nice and simple for everybody, just because we hope that you use it. So in this third pillar, it really is about the interaction between you and the other person. And what we want to challenge you with is oftentimes we find ourselves in harder conversations and we weren't sure we wanted to go there. Has anyone had that happen where all of a sudden we're in a deep conversation and we're like, oh God, I'm not sure I was ready for this. So in this third pillar, mutual agreement is very important. Hey, do you want to go here right now? Do you have the capacity to have this type of conversation right now? And whether it's with a family member about, trying to figure out what to do for a family, gathering, or whether it's how to deal with a memorial service, or how to really trying to work through women's rights, we have to have mutual agreement about going into a place that can feel a lot more, where there's a lot more stakes, right? Higher stakes and feeling more threatened. And so in mutual agreement, in the we, it's, am I ready for this? And do you have space for us to talk about this right now? And I'm not even talking about having a conversation with a loved one. This can be online. Before I push the enter button, am I in space to push that enter button? Or am I ready to answer the phone with this person because I know they're going to want to go there? And so really, in the we, it's starting to, you're really looking at and using discernment. And discernment is a beautiful, gentle, term. And so it's very interesting to me because I think that oftentimes we want the other person to see our viewpoint. But how often do you think about, maybe I would be willing to share my viewpoint? Does that ever happen? We have to be willing to ask that of ourselves with this mutual agreement. Am I in a place where I want to feel heard, but am I willing to hear something that I don't like? Or am I willing to hear something that maybe might change my mind? I was in a discussion 2 years ago. It was after one of the school shootings. I was in a conversation with a police officer friend of mine, and he did not want to ban assault weapons, and I did. And we had a mutual agreement. You want to have this conversation.
The we also includes not trying to convince or fix or save the other. So it is listening is a huge part of the we. And oftentimes it can be, if you're feeling activated in the conversation, meaning if your nervous system feels agitated and maybe you're starting to see red, to sit back, practice listening, breathing while you're in that space, and just letting them talk, and even asking deepening questions. Why do you feel that way? Or where did you learn that? What does that bring up for you? How do you connect with that? When we try to, and I certainly have attempted to do this, try to convince someone to believe what I believe. Anyone else? Okay. Phew, glad I'm good. Oftentimes, more often than not, the other digs their heels in, and then they're never going to change their mind. So the listening and the deepening of questions, and like Angela's example of talking it through with someone and agreeing on talking it through, can actually, it is much more productive. And there was changing of perspective. Another benefit of this practice of communication can be a deepening of connection. So connecting with the person that you're talking with, you went through this hard thing together. And you may feel closer to this person even though they have very different beliefs than you. Okay. Anything else to add? So you or me, you, we, pillars.
Yeah, I think the not trying to convince or fix, save, or rescue is important, for sure. But I think if you do feel passionate about something, maybe checking in to see if that passion has turned into fear or anger. Because in polarity, that's where we go, right? We can get angry. And oftentimes, and I'm sure you've seen this in all the levels right now, when you're talking about from international stuff all the way down to someone in your household, that if someone gets angry, it's oftentimes because that person feels threatened, that something might be really feeling unsafe. And so I think that it's really important to understand that that's typically where anger comes from. In these types of situations, people feel like certain things are in threat, and certainly that is absolutely the case. There are sometimes things that are a threat, and so I think that's what gets complicated, right? Is that if we're talking about something and we're starting to get angry, it's because we're feeling threatened and we're feeling fear. And that person is probably also feeling threatened and angry and fearful. And they're probably, the thing about it, like Kristen was saying, is that it's oftentimes probably the same base right or thing that we're fearful about, but we're just coming at it from different perspectives. So when you see anger in a difficult conversation, either in yourself, the me, or in the you, or it's starting to happen in the we, then stopping and saying to yourself or to the person you're speaking with, there may be some threat here, there may be fear. And is that an opportunity to say, you and I might want the same thing, but we just, through our own unique experiences and beliefs, might be going at it from different directions.
And along with this, the fear and the anger that's surfacing when it's happening on both sides, the anger and the fear that's underneath it, anger, fear that's underneath it, those bumping into each other is the cause of polarity.
So that's we. So the fourth pillar is what we were saying close, but it's really transitions. So as the conversation is coming to an end, making sure that it's wrapped up with a nice bow. So some of that might look like, hey, I might need to end this conversation early because this doesn't feel like it's safe for me or that I am getting activated into fight or flight. So using close or this fourth pillar to terminate a conversation at the appropriate time to preserve the relationship. And ultimately, relationship integrity is very important, that being right is not more important than the relationship. And as much as we want to justify that sometimes with strangers, it's the same thing. Humans are more important than a viewpoint. So when we're talking about this fourth pillar, transitions, it's really important to be able to say this feels like it needs to come to an end. And maybe it comes to a peaceful end. Okay, that was a good conversation. That felt, I feel heard. That was hard. We're still agreeing to disagree. And can we transition out of that conversation? Or even just saying, I think I need to take a break. Are you good with that? Right? So transitions are important because when you're having difficult conversations, there is an intensity there. And there needs to be some sort of wrapping up, or what we in the therapy world call closing the container. Do you guys, anybody know what I mean when I say container? Or just kind of closing that space of this was a hard moment and it may have been kind of intense and boom, I got into some fight or flight, and now we're going to close that up, put a bow on it, and make sure the integrity of the relationship is still intact. So transitions is the fourth pillar.
Are you ready to practice? Seriously?
I hear a resounding yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, so we really are. I'm going to walk through the steps and then you can find a partner. We'll ask you to find a partner. It can be the person that you came with. That's definitely fine. And you're also welcome to sit out. You do not have to do this. You have choice and freedom here at Werner Memorial Library. So you'll have a partner. And for about a minute or two, you'll find a topic that you disagree on. Yeah. And scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like the most passionate, hard, challenging thing for you to talk about, don't go to that one. Do like a 5 or a 6, okay? So maybe it's an issue that's happening in our valley that you're not, that you feel you have a stance for, you have an opinion about, but it's not like very activating for you.
Affordable housing, the Brown Ranch, wolves. Just to give you
If you need some more ideas, we're happy to throw them up. Okay, so you'll find your topic, and then doing the steps, I want to make sure I go through all of them. There, as we have mentioned, commitment to moving through this with curiosity, compassion, and non-judgment. So if you ever get to a point in the conversation where you feel like you cannot have that, name it. That's why we're practicing. Like, oh wow, I'm noticing that it's very difficult for me to be non-judgmental here. Okay? Or I'm very activated, I can't even hear you right now. Okay? And tone. If you feel your tone getting really elevated or pressured, forced, notice that. Take a break, back off. Okay? You'll decide who goes first. That person will speak about the topic and why they align the way they do with this topic. And then the other person will listen mindfully, noticing what happens in their body, so the me, and then the you, remembering the common humanity. closer than we think. And you can ask deepening questions to the person that's speaking. How do you feel about that topic? Why does the topic feel important to you, et cetera, et cetera. And again, communicate, communicate, communicate. I'm feeling activated. Oh, this is really interesting. I'm noticing whatever you're noticing. And then you'll switch, and you'll do the same practice again.